This is Mrs. Phyllis. I'm here to talk about the Andantino piece from Suzuki Violin Book 1. And I'm going to talk about three different points from that piece. And I'm only focusing on the middle part. So in your book, the beginning, that first line, that's the beginning. The second line, it's similar to the beginning. And then the last line, it's the same as the second line. So I'm talking about the third line of music in your book. The first thing we want to address is the first finger. Anytime you have a pattern in the music where you're going from 1 to 3, if it's a finger pattern of 1 to 3, you leave that first finger down. Now, this skill you should have learned, you should have remember from Song of the Wind, where you were introduced to it. And so if you are having problems with remembering these types of skills, it's because you've not learned them. So I encourage you to go back to the beginning of the book and review those pieces, but this time comb through them for the specific technique found in them. The music in the Suzuki repertoire is put together in such a way where it builds on each other. It's linear, like math. You need to, that's why we begin with the Twinkle, Twinkle Little Star variations. They're building blocks. And if you are not understanding what's happening in the music, the techniques learned in each piece, and this is something I've gone over in class time and time again, where I ask you all to, we play games like this, where I ask you to think about the piece, to analyze the piece, what's in the piece, what do you see in the music. We take our books out and so on and so forth. Okay, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I think you understand my point. You have to review, and you have to review with thinking about what you're doing. Okay, so back to Andantino. This is the part that we're going to address. I will play that line of music and then I'll talk about it. Oh, wrong piece. Okay, that's Song of the Wind. Okay. All right. So the other thing, you see how I played Song of the Wind right there? There's a lot of connections with these pieces, the way they put them together. When you are looking at your music with your thinking, involved, right? When you're thinking through what's happening, you will see, oh my gosh, this part in Andantino is the same as what happens in Song of the Wind. You'll begin to see connections. It's all about connections, guys. Just like when you do math, right? When you learn those basic foundational math skills, when you go to that next level, you'll see, oh, this is how this integrates. This is how it connects. Okay? So please, when you're practicing, don't do it blindly. Don't do it mindlessly. Put some thought into what it is you are working on. Make a goal and focus on that goal. All right, let's move on. So that's the part of Andantino that we're going to focus on today, what I just played. Number 1, anchor the first finger. And anchor means what? Hold it down. Keep it down. I introduce it as tunneling when you learn Song of the Wind. Tunnel the first finger. You want to create a tunnel, right? Tunnel. Okay, so anchor. Some teachers use anchor. So here's the first finger is down. And when you go to 3 on the A string, See how I left this first finger down? You don't, this is incorrect. Did you hear that? Because I lifted, I made a noise on the E string. You don't want to do that. That's sloppy and it's ugly and it makes it sound bad. Leave the first finger down. Okay? Then of course when you get to your open A, release the fingers. Okay, so that's that part. The second thing in this part of the piece I want to address involves the bow. So in your music, you know, sometimes we use long bows or whole bows. Whole bow is when you go from the frog to the tip and back to the frog. That's called a whole bow. Sometimes we use a half bow. Right? That's where we go from the middle to the tip, or from the frog to the middle, or, you know, middle to tip, depending on what's happening in the music and how it is supposed to be expressed will determine how we should use our bow. In this part of Andantino, the quarter note, sometimes the value of the note, the duration, which means the length, so or how long, right? The other thing is I'm sharing these words with you. If there's a word that I'm saying that you don't know, write it down. Okay, this is developing your thinking. Write it down and then define it. Right? Listen to what I'm talking about or how I am describing the word so you can get an understanding. So when I talk about the duration of a note, that's the value of a note. Sometimes we can see from the how long we are to hold a note determines the length of bow we're going to use. So in this part of Andantino, there are quarter notes and there are 2/8 notes. And so obviously if you know the value of those notes, you can see that the quarter note, you're going to use a longer bow. And then comes the 1/8 notes. You're going to use a shorter bow. See? So quarter, quarter. I'll do it again. Okay. So I've talked about first finger anchoring. When you place the 3, we just talked about using the length of the bow. Now the third part of this passage that I want to address is what comes next, which is a scale pattern. What do I mean by pattern? What do I mean by a scale? So these are, again, these are terms that you should know already if you are at this point in your book, right? So we know a scale is our notes that step up and down. So what do I mean by step? Another vocabulary word you should write down. A step is when you go from one note to the very next note. One finger to the very next finger. An example. A, B, C, D, D, C, B, A. That's an example of stepping up or down. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, 3, 2, 1. Another example, using numbers. Okay? So if I play that, it will sound like this. Right? That was the A, B, C, D. Going up. D, C, B, A going down. And then when I talk about the finger pattern, what finger pattern involved that A, B, C, D I played? What's the finger pattern? So when I ask you about finger pattern, your answer should always be a number. Fingers. Okay? On the violin, we play with 4 fingers, okay? And we also play on our open string, and you know that open means no fingers, so we can just say 0. So when we have a pattern that using that example I just played, A, B, C, D, it involved the finger pattern of 0, 1, 2, 3. Watch my fingers. See that? 0, 1, 2, 3, which makes the pitches, another vocabulary word. What is a pitch? The sounds or the musical notes of A, B, C, and D. Okay? So going to this part in Andantino where we have a scale pattern. We begin on E, open E that is, and we land on the low E, which is the first finger on the D string. And that goes like this. What is the finger pattern for this scale that we just played? 0, 3, 2, 1, 0, 3, 2, 1. Okay? And then the other thing is, what did you notice about the bow? When I played the scale pattern, what kind of notes are these here? Right, these are quarter notes. So obviously I used a whole bow for that passage. Okay. Now now for this pattern, I began it with open. I had you do the open strings. You could also play with the fourth finger, right? And you know that when you play with, you know that there are some fingers we use on the violin that are the same as our open strings. And you know, I've taught you all about this in a previous lesson. Ringtone notes, there are 9 of them. And so instead of playing your open E, you can use your fourth finger E on the A string. And you can do that also on the D string as well. So you don't have to play open A. So then the finger pattern would be 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay? Instead of 0, 3, 2, 1, 0, 3, because we're replacing the 0 with 4. Okay? So it will sound like this. And then in your music, over that last note or over the bar line, you'll see a symbol of a fermata. And you have learned what a fermata is in a previous piece. And you can hear what I do there. And so that will tell you the definition of what a fermata is. I'll play it one more time. Okay. So, I'll play that passage in Andantino one more time. All right. So again, in this video, we covered the third line of music in Andantino. We talked about anchoring the first finger when going to 3. Let me say something about this pattern. Anytime you have a finger pattern that involves a skip, 1, 3, 2, 4, or it's inverse, you want to keep that finger down. Okay, anchor that finger, 1, 3. Okay. I take that back about the inverse. When you're going back, you're not keeping it down because you're taking the finger off. But so that might be something you want to practice as well. Practice your thirds. Practice playing thirds and going up. Practice ascending thirds. and check out how your fingers are moving, and your first finger is being held down. So for example, see? See how I kept each of the first fingers down. So if it's 1, 3, leave the 1 down. 2, 4, leave the 2 down. 3, 1, leave the 3 down. Okay? Okay? So, and then we talked about the bowing and then the scale passage with regard to stepping. That is a descending. That's part of your D major scale in that last part of Andantino, right? That's part of a D major scale, but we're starting from E. And then you want to use your whole bow there. Okay, so I hope this was helpful. I hope you, as I talked about some terms that you've learned and concepts you've learned previously, that kind of revived your memory about, oh yeah, that's right, and this is how you do that. And then you can go and practice those specific skills. Just break it apart and just practice it individually, like those ascending thirds with regard to the finger pattern. Practice stepping, right? And then practice your long bows and short bow strokes on an open string. So you can, work at playing with the whole bow. How is your arm moving, right? Is my arm straight? There's all these little things you can think about and be aware of as you are practicing. And that's it. So if you have any questions, give me a call, and I'll see you at our next lesson.